All right, so leadership. Who knew the Bible had so much to say about it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And today we're not just looking at the big names like Moses, David, all those guys.
Right.
We're diving deep into how the Bible, actually the language itself reveals a lot about leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Some pretty insightful, some pretty surprising stuff.
That's right.
So maybe you can help me out with this. I mean, the word leader, how often does that like actually show up in the Bible?
Yeah, not as much as you might think.
Really?
Not as much.
But
But the idea, the concept of leadership.
oh, I see.
Yeah, it's woven throughout the whole text.
Okay, so the word's not there, but the concept is definitely there.
Absolutely.
So how does that work? How do we see that?
Well, let's take a look at 1 Corinthians 12.28.
Okay.
Now, here the Apostle Paul lists governments right alongside things like prophecy and healing.
Governments.
Yeah, it's presented as a spiritual gift almost.
Governments as like a spiritual gift.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think most people would think of it that way,
You're right. Yeah.
It's an interesting way to look at it. So how does that, I mean, what are the implications of viewing leadership through that particular lens? I mean, governments as a gift from God.
Well, it really shifts the focus, doesn't it?
How so?
From power to service.
Oh, I see.
So it suggests that the ability to lead, to guide, to govern, it comes from God. It's given to you.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's not for your own personal gain, but
Okay.
for the well-being of everyone, of the whole community.
So it's less about being the boss and more about like serving others
Yeah, exactly.
and using your talents to kind of to serve others.
That's right.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and we see this pop up again in Romans 12.8.
Oh, okay.
Paul talks about ruling, he puts it right next to giving and mercy.
Okay.
So again, it's framed as this gift, a gift from God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really a common thread we see throughout the Bible.
What's up?
It's that we are meant to use our talents for the greater good,
Yeah, right.
whatever those talents might be.
Now, that really challenges like our traditional idea of what a leader is, what leadership really is.
You're right. It does.
And speaking of challenges, our source material, the Bible, frequently kind of pushes back against the way the world sees leadership, right?
Absolutely.
So like how does it contrast with how the world often sees things?
Well, I think one of the most striking examples is Luke 22.26.
Okay.
And it says, "The greatest among you should become like the youngest, and the leader as one who serves."
Oh, wow. So that completely flips the script.
Yeah.
Like it's not about climbing the ladder and getting all the authority.
Yep.
It's about like stepping down and serving people.
Yeah, exactly. Lifting others up.
Yeah. Almost like a paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this next one, I know this passage has created quite a bit of conversation, and that's 1 Timothy 3.5. This is where it connects leading a household, specifically by a wife, to leading in the church.
Mm-hmm.
So how has that verse been interpreted, over time by different groups?
Well, you're right. It has sparked a lot of debate.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember the historical and cultural context there, right? But also to acknowledge that different groups today, they understand and apply this passage in different ways.
Okay. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the books of Judges and Kings.
Right.
What do you think? I mean, these books give us this really fascinating glimpse into like leadership in action, don't they?
They really do. Yeah, we see a whole range of leaders. Some, they really rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
And others, well, they fall short.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that leadership isn't about, just being inherently great.
Okay.
It's about choices, actions, and ultimately the impact you have.
I see. And it also highlights how leadership can be cyclical. I mean, we see the successes, but we also see the failures.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Judges 2.1619, it describes this pattern of disobedience, right?
Right.
And then God steps in and there's deliverance.
Mm-hmm.
And then, sadly, they just fall back into the same old habits.
It's a repeating pattern, unfortunately.
It is. So what do you make of that? What's the interesting takeaway there?
Well, I think it's interesting how much emphasis it puts on the leader's role in restoring, bringing people back to faith.
Okay, so it's not just about, like, leading them into battle.
Right.
It's about, like, a spiritual kind of leadership.
Exactly. Judges like Deborah or Gideon, they weren't just military leaders.
Right.
They were guiding the people back to God.
Yeah.
They were examples of faith, faith in action.
So they were winning battles, but they were also winning hearts and minds.
Exactly.
And that kind of reminds me of a verse in 1 Kings 1.37 A servant expresses this wish for Solomon that he would be an even greater leader than his father David.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
It is, isn't it? What do you make of that?
Well, I find that so fascinating because it implies this desire to not just, keep things the same, but to build on what came before.
Okay, yeah,
To always be striving for better leadership, leadership that benefits everybody.
yeah,
It's forward thinking, it's aspirational.
it is. Wow. Well, we've covered so much from leadership being a gift to servant leadership
Mm.
and the impact of leadership even on a whole nation.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, uh, what really sticks out to you from all of this?
For me, it's the idea that true leadership, the kind of leadership that's really highlighted in the Bible, it's all about serving others.
Yeah.
It's about using your gifts and your abilities not to promote yourself, but to help others and to do good in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
It challenges us to think about the way we lead, and the impact we have on other people.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I think that's really it, right? That's the big
I
takeaway.
think so.
So just a thought for you to consider as we go. How might all these different perspectives on leadership that we see in the Bible, how might that inform how you approach leadership in your own life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your community, your work?
That's a good question.
It is. It's something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you.
It's been fun.
It has.
We'll see you next time.
See you.